Welcome back, Creation Grounds. If you've been with me this long, if you've been rocking with me this long, I appreciate you. And if you're just joining for this episode, welcome. This episode marks part three of a three-part series. First time I've done this. The first episode was Sarah Salzberg. The second was Brian Latondre. And for this episode, if you don't know already, I'm happy and excited to introduce you to Shanna Sharp. Shanna Sharp hails from Alabama. Came up here. I'll let her explain the story, but it's a perfect example of preparation meeting opportunity. Came up here for singing. Ended up working five jobs, y'all. She's a hustler. And she basically accrued this debt, credit card debt, and then used real estate to get out of that debt. She is now debt free. She owns a business. And in this episode, she's going to talk to you about how her interest in the art started, the moments leading up to her move to NYC, what her first 6 months in NYC was like. Some of you might be new to NYC and want some inspiration. She'll help you there. The top 3 highlights of her artistic career, why some artists have an aversion to real estate, an advantage that some artists in real estate would have over a traditional real estate agent, how Bohemia can help artists get started in real estate, the formation of her business mess hall, and basically skills in real estate that can help amplify your artistic career. If you just solely want to be an artist, there's value for you there as well. So she's also going to talk about the day she made her last credit card payment. It feels great. Some of you might be in debt, and she can help you there as well. Enjoy this episode with Shanna Sharp. I'm excited to get the show started. I'm excited to welcome our next guest, Shanna Sharp. She's at Bohemia Realtor Group with me as well. She's killing it. She's a business owner, and she's also a singer, songwriter, and a talented artist. So what's up, Shanna?
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll start with, if you had to create a soundtrack for your childhood, what would the defining instrument sound be?
Such a cool question. For me, I guess it would be guitars, but more specifically, it would be like Southern rock band sounds, like a la Allman Brothers.
Allman Brothers? Is that like kind of acoustic or electric guitar?
Yeah, it's like Southern rock. So there's definitely like acoustic elements and electric. So I guess defining particular instrument would be acoustic guitar.
Okay. And how did your interest in the arts start originally?
I can't remember a time when I wasn't like dancing or singing. Like it was how I played.
Mm-hmm.
I remember where some kids I guess are playing house. I was like in the yard doing dance routines, thinking like someone was going to drive by and discover me.
Nice.
Yeah.
And did that lead you up to NYC? Tell me about the moments leading up to the move to go to NYC.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I actually kind of had hit a point. So I was in performing arts school since a very young age. So had like multiple focuses within that school and was like very dedicated, always was going from school to rehearsal to practice to, show, back to school. So when I got to my senior year, to be honest, I got kind of burnt out. And I just wanted to kind of be a normal, not kid, I was 18, but you know what I mean? Like just kind of like a normal young adult and just like go to college. So I went to a state college at the time. I went to Auburn University,
mm-hmm.
which was great. I had a great time. And then, like 2 years in, I kind of had this, I wasn't getting, I was doing a lot of things creatively, but I was feeling like a little like, ooh, like itchy, like I'm supposed to be doing more. I'm supposed to be working harder. Like, what am I doing moment? And it just happened that I had gotten a call around that time from a talent scout from Epic Records.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It was really out of the blue. It was very like kind of kismet to be coming at that time. They had gotten a hold of one of my albums that I had put out as a high school student.
Wow.
And I guess they had gone to my performing arts high school, had gotten to see somebody giving them the CD, and then they reached out and they found my contact. I'm not really sure how they found me, but they did good work. And they were basically like, hey, are you, we'd love to meet with you. We'd love to talk more with you. And because I was having this crisis of life, I had already planned a trip to go visit my brothers in New York City who were living there at the time. So they literally called me the week before I was already scheduled to go to New York. So I was like, hey, listen, I'm actually heading to New York next week. I can come and meet with you.
Wow.
So, that's kind of like what initially led the path to moving to New York.
That's awesome. That's like it was meant to be. A lot of things just lined up for you.
Yeah, very like Alchemist. I don't know if you've ever read that book where it's like life kind of drops the signs of the path you're supposed to go on.
I love it.
Yeah.
What was so I'm assuming you start off with Epic. Did you immediately move to NYC? What was the first 6 months when you actually moved here? What was that like? Was it like hitting the ground running, or kind of had to build up some
Yeah,
traction?
so basically, that particular trip, and I'll get into the first 6 months, but the particular trip was I literally landed. I went directly to Epic Records offices, met with them. And at this point, I was a very confident and green, 18-year-old. I'm an artist and I know best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time they were discussing, they were talking to me about, because this was '99, so they were talking to me about, do you think you could be kind of like a la Britney Spears / Spice Girl? And me being so true to my art, I was like, no, I'm more Lilith Fair. That's not who I am as an artist. How dare you? Which maybe not the smartest move in the world, but it was just very kind of like, well, that's not really who I am as an artist. This is what I am. If this is what you'd like, I'm not really sure why you called me if that's what you're looking for.
Wow.
Now, on that same trip, I had set up an audition for Circle in the Square, which is a theater conservatory up here.
Mm-hmm.
And so went to that audition, went back to Alabama, ended up getting into the program. So that was when I made the decision. So when I moved to New York, I literally moved to New York with like $200 in my pocket.
Wow.
I made a deal with my parents. They were like, listen, because they, very kindly were paying for Auburn University for me to go to school.
Right.
So they basically said, we'll pay the same amount of money, but not a penny more. So it basically covered my school, but it almost covered my school, but nothing else. So I came to New York. The first 6 months was I was in school at Circle in the Square, and I was working 5 jobs.
5 jobs.
5 jobs.
Damn.
I basically went from like 9 a.m. to like 3 a.m. every day.
Wow.
Like it was the thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember like I would call back home and I would just be crying, like, on a lunch break in between shifts. And I, like on the weekend, I'd be calling my mom. I was like, I don't think I can do it. I'm so tired all the time. And she would always say, like, well, you can come back to New York. And like, it's like my gut was just like, no, there's no way. I'm sticking it out. I can do this,
Yeah.
So I knew, it was the hardest. That first year was the hardest, which I think it is for most people when they moved to New York. But it was definitely defining that I knew this was where I wanted to be, because I was willing to do all that work to be here,
And also, I think that's pretty dope. I just want to acknowledge you for being at Epic Records and them saying, "Hey, we want you to do this," and you saying, "No, I'm."
Oh, thanks.
I'm this. That's awesome. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I think as artists, I think we have moments like that. And then there's definitely we have moments where we're like, "I'm just kidding. I'll be here for years. I don't
just
care.
please.
I want her paycheck."
Exactly. That'd be nice.
But no, I'm glad that I'm glad the path that I went on, and I'm glad that, because I think even when you aren't true to who you are as an artist, I don't think the path continues. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
And signing with a record label doesn't necessarily mean you make it or you're good. That like your life is set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say that the top 3 highlights of your artistic career so far would be?
Oh, wow. It's so funny. I was just talking with my husband about this last night because, I think when we think about like our top moments, it's very easy to say, okay, well, what was the most success, right? Like what was the highest point of success? But I think for me, the top moments are really where I felt just utterly fulfilled from my art. And one that comes to mind is I had this a gig. It was a gig with this production company called Atlantis Events, and was just doing like a 1-hour cabaret show. But it was just one of those shows where from stepping on the stage to finish, like the audience is like drinking your bathwater.
Yeah.
Like it's just all the things align, like all your jokes land, all your notes hit perfectly, and the audience is just there with you and they're going on the journey with you and you're getting to be free in the moment as a performer and really just improv in the moment and everybody's just with you. Like that was certainly, I will never forget that one particular show. And it's a show I did many times in front of many different audiences. It was just this particular night was just amazing. A second would be getting to perform. So I've got to perform on not been in a Broadway production, but I performed on a Broadway stage for like a one-night concert. And there's just something truly magical about being on the stage of a sold-out house in a Broadway house and getting to sing for people in that capacity. It's pretty amazing. It's a really cool feeling to be on that stage and get to experience that. I'm trying to think of one that wasn't just like solely about being on stage. I do think writing and I know. When I get people, and this is maybe not one particular thing, but it's one thing that is just really, I think, really cool as an artist and a highlight of being an artist, especially a singer and a songwriter, is when people message me like pictures of them listening to my music on their, what is it? Not radio.
iTunes.
What's the digital thing? You know what I'm talking about?
Spotify, iTunes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Spotify or their iTunes. And people telling me like, oh, your album was the soundtrack to this relationship that I had, or your album was the soundtrack to when I moved to New York. It's just so cool because I think we all have albums that kind of shape our life and we associate so specifically with the time in our life, and that my music got to be that for someone else. Like that's huge for me. I love it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you eventually kind of pivoted into real estate. I don't really exactly know your story of how you started, but why do you think that some artists have an aversion to real estate?
Oh, well, I mean, I think as an artist, I can't speak for everyone, but I grew up in going to performing arts schools since I was about 10. And I think what was, a constant thing that was beat into us was like, if you have a backup job, then you're just preparing yourself for the backup job. Like if you do anything else but art, then you're not an artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was like some kind of dirty word to have like a secondary career that wasn't artistic in nature,
Mm-hmm.
which was always so funny because then it's like, okay, well, what were artists then doing to pay the bills? They're like waiting tables and like bartending. And it's just so funny that it's like, why is that acceptable? But like anything else is considered you giving up on your art,
Yeah, I definitely did the waiting tables things for a while, and
Right.
wasn't any fun.
Yeah, no. Who wants? It's literally like being a servant. I mean,
exactly.
Not cute.
Yeah.
Not cute.
What advantages do you think that artists in real estate have over a traditional real estate agent?
As to like their skill as a real estate agent?
Or skill as a real estate agent, or just with people or anything.
Well, as artists, I can speak to, performing artists, especially, we are reading an audience, right? So you're listening and taking in your surroundings around you and you're reacting accordingly. And I think a strong agent, one of the strongest things you can do is really just listen to what your clients are needing and then react accordingly. Also, as artists, we get told no a lot. You're going to be told no more times than you're told yes, because if we were all told yes majority of the time, we'd all be Adele, right?
Yep.
So, and even I think Adele probably was told no more times than she was told yes. She just got a really big yes,
Yeah.
So I think in real estate, it's the same thing applies. You're going to work with more clients than you're ever going to close deals on.
Right.
So it's that ability to pick ourselves up without having reached the perceived finish line and keep going towards it.
And for Bohemia particularly, it's very artist friendly. How can Bohemia help artists get started in real estate?
Well, I think, Bohemia specifically, I think being a firm of, I think we're like over 70% artists, um, one, just having a real estate firm that understands that you do have a dual purpose in mind, that, you are working towards two things, and then having a company that's going to give you tips and ways on how to integrate those two careers that help both sides of it.
And you have your own business, Mess Hall, which I've been to in Harlem.
Yeah.
What led to the formation and the opening of Mess Hall?
Yeah, so Mess Hall, before I was a real estate agent, I was bartending in between gigs, and I started in real estate, and a couple of my colleagues at the time, they had opened a bunch of coffee shops, and they wanted to venture into opening up a bar. So neither of them had, worked in bars or restaurants, had certainly frequented plenty, but, had never, been on the other side of the house. And I had been everything to like, a hostess busser to like a manager. So I had kind of done the full gamut of different jobs in the service industry. So they came to me and they were like, "Hey, Shanna, you're doing pretty well in real estate. We imagine you might have a chunk of change. Do you want to open a bar with us?" So people always say, it's funny, they're like, "Oh, was it your dream to open a bar?" And not to be flippant, but it just wasn't necessarily on my checklist of things to do. I always thought it would be cool, but it really was an opportunity presented itself, and I just happened to be ready for that opportunity when it came.
That's awesome. So kismet again. It's all working out for you, Shanna. I need to hang out with you more.
Well, I think the thing that, because I don't think things are all luck. I think there is luck in something and kismet in it.
Yeah.
But there's also the preparation you do to be ready for that when it comes.
Agreed.
And then the willingness you have and the bravery you have to act on an opportunity.
Yeah. What skills do you think that you gain in real estate that can actually amplify an artistic career?
Oh, great question. So for me, and I know for a lot of fellow agents, it is very hard in your artistic career to not feel personally assaulted when you get a no, right? It feels very much like you as a soul, as a human,
yep.
Because our art is so in the depth of us, So for that to be rejected or to be told no feels so personal. And with real estate, what really helped me was suddenly the product I was selling was indeed a product outside of myself, right? And I think artists have a very hard time with the business side of art because it is a business and it is a product you are selling, and that product just happens to be your talent.
Right.
And it's hard to, not feel gross and think of yourself as a product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, with real estate, being outside of myself, and then me understanding that, okay, I'm receiving rejection. Why is this not hurting me as much in my real estate business as it hurts me in my artistic career? And then, and I realized it's like, because I'm not looking at myself as a product. I'm looking at myself as a person and a soul, and I'm feeling rejected. So when I could approach, I think the creation of art has to come from the soul, and that is your person that is inside you. But the promotion of art is not your soul, right? So the promotion of art is understanding your product and using your analytical brain and your editing brain, right? Mm-hmm. To really break down how that fits into the wants and needs of the people that you're soliciting to.
That's beautiful. So there's some people who, I definitely believe this as well prior to getting into real estate. There's some people who believe that you can't do real estate and pursue artistic career full time. And you kind of touched on this already a little bit, but how accurate is that, and why or why not?
I mean, here's what I will say where it is. There's ways in which I won't say it's true, but there are ways in which I can certainly see where someone feels this way. Because like with anything, it's if you're doing two things at once, it's not that you just have to do more, right? So let's say to fully do your artistic career, you've got to give it 40 hours, right? Mm-hmm. You got to dedicate time to that craft. Well, likewise, when you run a business, you have a business. Real estate is a business that someone runs, right? Mm-hmm. It likewise takes time. It takes 40 hours a week or plus, or what you get what you put into it. So where it is I will say it is difficult for sure, because you are juggling two careers that equally need a full focus from you. So it takes a unique, a unique person to be able to juggle, and also to, to have the energy, to have the drive to keep going when you're tired, like to, and understanding when a break needs to happen, to not be all consumed and broken down from it, but to make sure that you're taking the next best step for both businesses at all times.
And I know that you are financially free from student loans and Sally Mae and Nelnet and all these people. So tell me about that day where you made your last student loan payment. Everybody wants to hear this. This is beautiful.
For me, I'm the beautiful dummy that that got herself into some credit card debt. So like I mentioned before, my parents were kind enough to help me to a certain degree with my school. So I was lucky enough not to have student loan debt. But I kind of created my own debt with credit cards, and a lot of that came from, I moved to the city with $200 in my pocket, and it's an expensive place, and, producing your own albums is expensive, living is expensive. So, real estate was what allowed me to get out from under that debt. And I do remember the last payment I made to my credit card to pay it off in full was a $4,000 payment. And I remember I was like, I don't know, can I afford? And I was like, just do it. Just eat peanut butter and jelly for the rest of the week. Fine. Do it. Or maybe for the next couple of months. Just, and I remember it was this huge weight. As soon as I hit send on the payment, I just felt so free. And then I would say there was a mourning period where I was so mad at myself because then I was really owning up to what I had done. I was owning up to my own irresponsibility, and, it was like, man, you could have had, 30 grand in the bank right now. What's the matter with you? But luckily I forgave myself over time.
That's good.
Yeah, it was a huge weight lifted. I mean, I'm sure as anyone knows that's in any kind of debt, whether it be from student loans or credit cards or, medical expenses, it is something that weighs on you in a way that you don't even realize, and it's all the time, every day.
And how you said you had $30K total in credit card debt that you paid off?
Yes,
wow.
I sure did.
Wow.
Yeah. And I paid it off aggressive. I mean, I got it paid off in 1 year, which was, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't gotten into real estate.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What are you currently aiming for in your artistic career and also in your real estate business?
What am I currently in?
What are you currently aiming for?
Oh, aiming for, sorry. What am I currently aiming for? So with music, I'm definitely working on some individual shows, both for my own music and then for as a cabaret standpoint. But I think what I'm aiming for is really licensing of music. Publishing, licensing, getting placements in, television shows, movies, commercials, things like that. That's a passion and a drive for me right now. And in real estate, because we work together, my role has definitely changed over the years in real estate. And I do personal deals, but, my official title is, the head of agent development at Bohemia. And so my passion and my drive is really to just create the best experience I can for the agents coming in, and try to make, even though my experience was great, I want to make it even better. So it's always looking at, how can I improve the company? How can I help more people who are in similar situations to me change the trajectory of their life? And how quickly and efficiently can I do that for them?
So there's some people out here that might be listening to this. They're not in real estate yet. They're an actor, maybe just graduating, BFA, MFA, whatever it is, BA. What are 3 things that an artist needs to know if they're interested in real estate? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. So, I think we're talking kind of about the good, right? And that you can make a lot of money. You can really change your life financially in a very short period of time that other careers, I mean, sure, in our artistic career, like, if we hit the lottery and we get that big fancy television gig, then sure, that could happen. But, and will for a lot of us, but, we all know you get the Broadway show and then the Broadway show closes and you're right back to waiting tables,
Right.
But, the good is definitely the money that you can make is great. The bad. So, okay, for someone just out of school getting into real estate, I think what can be tricky and maybe they don't understand is that it is starting a business. So, that first year in real estate, I definitely drove a lot harder on my mind space and my time in real estate than I did artistically that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in starting anything, your focus is going to kind of pull there and kind of has to pull there. Now, does that mean I didn't do gigs in that year? Did it mean I didn't audition in that year? Absolutely not. I totally did. I went away, I did gigs, I came back. But if I was to rank my focus numero one was I got to get out of this debt and I got to learn this business. I got to build up this business to sustain. And then how that kind of settles out is, a year into it, once you kind of understand a little bit more how your business works, how the market works, you can then refocus and to really have a dual focus on both careers. And you can learn that juggle.
Yeah. So a great way that somebody kind of put it to me once is you're spinning plates and it takes some effort to spin the first plate. And then once you have it spinning, it's kind of easy. So that's been helpful to me.
Exactly. You're like juggling, like you juggle one ball and you're like, cool, I got this. And then they give you two balls. You're like, okay, I got that. And then you add the third in, it's like, exactly. But you have to kind of spend some time focusing on that one thing to get it good, to spin the plate. Like you said, that's exactly right.
And strictly for artists who are not going to get into real estate, but they're inspired by your artistic career, maybe they heard your album. Yeah. What piece of advice would you have for them on getting to the next stage of their career?
Well, I think it's that, you have to take action. I think sometimes we get lost in our own head. And our head can be a very dangerous place as an artist, right? Or, even as a human being. I think there's a lot of negative chatter that can seep in, and we create a crystal ball sometimes of the future that is based in no reality. Mm-hmm. And that can sometimes halt us from taking the next step. And meaning like, I want to submit my music for this movie. Oh, it's not going to be good enough. Oh, I'm not as good as them. Well, who am I? Who do I think I am? Right? Like, I think as artists, we all seek approval. And I think that probably comes from some stemming self-worth issue that we all have. So it's very easy to get lost in your mind and your mindset. And I think the only way out of that spiral is to just take action. So being able to, again, be brave and take the next best step, and then you can spend time analyzing the results of it. Did it work? Did it not work? Why do I think it worked or didn't work? Talk to people who have done it, who are there. I've had a lot of these now that I'm really focusing on licensing. My first step was, who do I know that's had real great success with licensing and publishing their music? And then I just reached out to them and was like, hey, can I buy you a drink? Can I buy you a coffee? Would you be willing to chat with me sometime? And, look, 9 times out of 10, people find the time and they're welcome to, happy to chat with you. And so just hearing other people's stories about how they did can inspire me on what my next step should be. Because I'm sure if people are listening to this, they're probably like, well, that's all well and good, take the next step. But what if you don't know what the next step is? So sometimes the action is just figure out what the next step is, that you could take.
Do it and figure it out later. Yep, hear that.
Yeah, and if someone's had success at it, learn what they did and see if you can do the same thing or something similar.
And I ask all my guests this question.
Okay.
When you think of the word creative, who comes to mind for you and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. A specific person, creative. I'm sorry to go blank on you, Aaron.
It's all good. Take your time.
You're like,
it's a $1 million question right here.
yeah, creative and why. Honestly, I don't think a particular person comes to mind. For me, it's just like almost a lifestyle, a way of being. Not to sound too basic with that, but when I think of the word creative, I just think of someone who's open, someone who is taking in the world around them and feeling brave and free enough to express themselves within that world.
Awesome. And how can people connect with you? You got a social media website? Yeah. Where can they listen to your music?
Yeah, you can basically by searching Shanna Sharp Music, just one word. That'll take you to any social media handles, YouTube channels. You can check out videos, and then if you're on like Spotify or iTunes or any of like streaming services, Amazon, you can just search Shanna Sharp.
Awesome, Shanna, you're the best. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Aaron. You're the best.